103 FM and 106.5 FM.
You're listening to U-Turn, a show about finances, nonprofit organizations, and politics in your county. And here is your host, Nadia Renner, Tom Murphy, and Eric Steinman with U-Turn.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio Show. Happy Memorial Day weekend. We honor those who have passed serving the United States military, and thank you to those who have served and that are still serving.
Absolutely, it's an interesting as a veteran. It's a week that, or a weekend or a holiday that I really appreciate, and particularly here on Memorial Day, remembering the men and women that have given the last full measure on behalf of their country. Our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers go to the families that remain, and thank you for your sacrifice and your just hanging in there with whatever consequences you're dealing with as part of that.
Absolutely. Let's review a little bit. If this is your first time tuning in and listening to U-Turn Radio Show, let's go over our mission here at U-Turn Radio Show.
Yeah, in short, it's let's turn things around. And at a local level, we're interested in turning things around as it applies to particularly local governments.
That's right. And we also want to hear from you guys, the listeners. You guys are more than welcome to call in 909-792-5222. That's 909-792-5222. Or you can also email us. You can email us at info@uturnradio.com. That's info@uturnradio.com. And here at U-Turn Radio Show, all of our listeners that call in get a reward. Yes, that's right. If you call in, we will spin the wheel.
Yeah, if you're watching online, here's the spinner. There it is.
And you can win from hundreds to thousands of dollars. We gave out, $300, $1,200, $1,300. So you can win a lot of dinero here.
Yeah, last week was $1,300 to the Institute for Justice that did a very good piece.
So we will donate on your behalf to your favorite charity operating anywhere in the Inland Empire. So you guys should definitely call. Even to say hello, can we do that? 909-792-5222. That's 909-792-5222. Let's review a little bit of our show that we had last week for the people that missed that. Last Sunday, we touched on the oppression session part 2.
Yeah, we shared a story where local governments, both out in the desert and here in the county of San Bernardino, have partnered, if you will, with a law firm. And what'll happen is a resident will get a minor fee for a minor violation. The resident may not take care of it, but then after a few notices, they get hauled into criminal court. And at that point, they're probably ready to go ahead and pay the fine. They pay the fine, and they think everything's good. Paid my $1,000 fine for my addition that I didn't tell the city I was doing. And then 6 months later, they get a lawyer bill for $30,000, and that's representing what the private law firm expended in terms of effort to take them to court and prosecute them.
And this private law firm is hired by the city,
right?
As well.
Yep.
So just to tie that back to, this is the flow of the show has been to illustrate the problems with the growth of government in the county, and the substantial growth where it exceeds the county population by more than 10 times. The county budget is increasing more. And where's that going to lead to? Well, first of all, there was a caller that asked about what could be done about it, and we related in the second show some of our attempts to do something about it and get some ballot measures before the people that would restrain some of that growth, and how we were basically sued by the county, which has led us to go on air with this. And then we talked about in our third show some of the things that are a consequence of that growth amongst the government, becoming kind of an elite an elite class, if you will, people who are making more money and growing much faster and crowding out the private sector. And we talked about how they were going, and again, the theme on this is, you said, you talked about somebody who maybe put on an addition. It's not always that. It's, in our third show we talked about a mechanic who was taking a customer in his car, and the customer had some pot or something, and they take the car from him with his tools in it. He can't get it back. They're asking for thousands of dollars, $20,000-$30,000 to get his car back, and which he can't do, so he's out of work. And then when we got to the fourth show, we brought it back local to what's going on here, and that's the policing and prosecuting for profit.
Yeah, it's a great term. I like that one.
We heard about, and that was the first story was a woman who had worked all her life, cleaning houses and got enough money to buy a rental house, and not her, but her tenants, raised some chickens, and so they went after her for the chickens that her tenants had. And again, it was the mechanics, had someone riding in his car, not him, that had some pot in the car, and all these become an opportunity for the governments to grab a chunk of money, and they don't care about the consequences of it. They're going to, so they, for having a tenant that had chickens, they were looking to put, have her pay $6,000 in the end, or put that lien on her house and eventually push her out of what she's gained in working. So that brought us to this show, and to kind of keep the theme going on, we thought we'd look at some other ways that governments try in their focus to get more revenue to grow. They missed a boat on the things that governments really need to do, and so we went and looked into the San Bernardino County Building Department a little bit, and that should be issuing building permits to people who want to do construction, create jobs, create actually more tax base for the county. But they narrowed that down to what can we get from these people, largely in terms of fees and what regulations we can put on them. So what did we find about that, you guys?
Well, before we go on that too, if you guys want to listen to the previous episodes that Eric just covered, you can go to kcaaradio.com, and you can also find those episodes that we just covered. But we definitely did go to the building department, and we tried to interview people as well, or we interviewed people that have experience with the building department and what they've experienced trying to get permits, whether it's for a business or just a home. And it was very interesting what I found. You also went, Tom, and you actually went before I did to do your interviews, right? Right,
I did, and as a result of both our interviews, what we're calling today's show is the broken down building department. And what you'll hear today, or the stories you'll hear, we did these anonymously, and there's a reason why we did that. We tried to delete maybe some of the identifying information because a common theme was, hey, this is my job. I gotta work with these people being whichever building part they were referencing. And if they knew who I am, who knows what's going to happen to my permit? That was like a common theme. So, but the first gentleman that I ran into actually just parked next to him in a Taco Bell, and he's obviously a guy in the construction industry. So I just said, hey, let's talk about it, and he was really willing to do it. Very interesting guy. We have some audio that we'll play from that interview.
This was Tom's interview that he did.
Thanks for interviewing with U-Turn Radio. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, well, basically, I am your jack of all trades. At the moment, I am doing a small remodel within a living room.
How do you feel about building departments?
Now, I have dealt with the building department, and from the get-go realized I am not dealing with the typical building department of past. Begin with, their wait time is incredible. usually am in and out of a building department within 20 minutes. The first time I sat down, I was there 2 hours before my name was called, only to be rejected because I was missing one piece of information and they couldn't wait the 5 minutes for me to get it for them.
What? How about professionalism? Do you think they're good builders?
No. Where they got, my belief is some building inspectors, I'm sure, had a long history in the trades. But the planners who are their bosses, no, I think they're school taught and therefore from the book and not in the field and can make bad judgment calls. And I can think of one case in particular. A customer of mine was informed that a new fireplace that we had considered installing, it could be hooked up to the old vent of the old fireplace, sight unseen, even though we are talking about two different types of fireplaces, and due to their BTU ratings, the original vent would not have handled venting the new one. It would have been a disaster. It could have actually melted that pipe to the point where a fire later on could have ensued.
Okay, so somebody just dialed it in. You called the building department, and they sight unseen said, "Yeah, you can do that."
Said, "Go ahead, next."
Would you say, in general, your trade gets every permit that's required?
Code requires, if I recall, if you're going to change a switch, you need a permit. Now, if you're going to do something that takes 5 minutes, but you need to add 4 hours of your time to the building department, essentially, because you still got to meet the guy and wait for the guy to show up to inspect your work. Is it worth it?
Yeah. Man, forget that.
They're going to go with the guy that, I'm not going to mess with the building department. They're a joke, man.
Right. Okay. What's kind of your best story about the building department and an interaction you've had with them?
I have to say it was the one about the vent. That's the one that just sticks in my head the most. But essentially, I've had the planners come out, look at my stuff. Okay, well, we need this. Okay, well, I can get it right now. No, and they walk away. And it's like, that's rude. And I'm, a little respect,
The customer service, they're obviously not
inadequate.
Do you thank for being on U-Turn Radio?
Thank you, sir, and you have a good day.
Thanks for interviewing. Okay. What was interesting about that interview is that the themes that he kind of addressed, and I didn't play the whole interview, but the themes that he addressed were consistent with almost everybody else that I spoke to, and that was the amount of their time wasted in the process, the fact that customer service was very shoddy, and just at times even a lack of respect, if you will, and then the lack of practical knowledge within the building department. So that was a theme that you heard kind of all the way through, and I think in some of the interviews that you did.
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely like the overall theme. However, I also did want to go to the building department to get their side of the story, like what's the process, because they see these cases day in and day out, and I thought it would be fair to also get their story about how they go about it and why it might take long and why they might give you these fees, right? So I went, just to clarify, I waited 2 hours to get an interview, and the lady who I spoke to was very nice. She just didn't feel comfortable giving me the audio, and then she referred me to another lady who is the supervising planner for the community, and I tried to get with her, and that just didn't happen. So I also want to share that we tried to also get their perspective of maybe why it takes so long, or just to get both sides of the story. However, when we come back, I'll share my interview that I did. It's going to be in Spanish too, because I speak Spanish, and I'll translate it for you guys when we get back here on U-Turn Radio Show.
We'll be right back to U-Turn after this commercial break. Don't go away. This is Joe Lyons. Guardian Jet Center now honors every American who has made the ultimate sacrifice while serving in our armed forces.
May 28th is Memorial Day, and we remember Army Captain William D. Swenson, who served his country above and beyond the call of duty. On September 8, 2009, in Kunar Province, Afghanistan, Swenson and his team were on foot en route to a meeting with village elders when they were ambushed by 60 enemy fighters who bombarded them with rocket-propelled grenades, mortar, and machine gun fire. Swenson immediately returned fire, at the same time calling in and directing suppressive fire and aviation support. Several soldiers were injured and killed in the ensuing battle, and Swenson repeatedly risked his own safety as he rendered medical aid, assisted in evacuations, and recovered the fallen. For his leadership and bravery, William D. Swenson was awarded the Medal of Honor for service above and beyond.
Today, Guardian Jet Center salutes the men and women whose sacrifice has made the American way of life possible. Guardian, the most advanced fixed-base operator at Ontario International Airport, redefines the expectations of the general aviation business traveler, one client at a time. Single-engine or cabin-class aircraft give Guardian the opportunity to enhance the customer experience. The Guardian Jet Center is the gateway to Southern California.
On June 5th, the choice is clear. James Ramos for State Assembly. James Ramos is tackling homelessness in our community, finding permanent housing for more than 400 veterans. Now he's helping homeless youth and families find housing. James Ramos is fighting to keep us safe. San Bernardino County Police and Sheriff support James Ramos for Assembly. We need him in the State Assembly, fighting for us. James Ramos for State Assembly. Paid for by People for Better Government Committee of the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. Not authorized by a candidate or a committee controlled by a candidate.
Why are you listening to this radio station? Why? When you can host your own radio show. You're listening and you think you can do better? You have a message or a product you want everyone to know about. Host your own radio show. Team up with the area's best radio professionals and let them make you sound like you should be on NBC. KCAA NBC Radio, that is. KCAA produces more than 50 local programs each week on subjects ranging from business and sports to political talk, vegan diets, or even marijuana-related issues. We don't just broadcast on the radio, we broadcast to the world. Online, on TV, on social media, on Facebook. You'll be all over. Imagine what your friends will say. And KCAA reaches over 5 million people on 3 radio stations. Join the staff on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. NBC Radio. Jump on the KCAA Express. Call 909-793-1065. That's 909-793-1065 and get ready to transmit.
Tom, Nadia, and Eric are back with more only on the U-Turn radio show right here on KCAA.
Welcome back to U-Turn Radio Show. Before the break, we played an interview that Tom conducted, and we're today talking about the building department. And you pretty much what's the process of trying to get a permit, whether you work for the city or the county, or if you're just a citizen trying to get a permit here in the county, and what that looks like. And like Tom had said, part of the theme from the interviews that we held, pretty much everybody kind of said around the same thing, as far as like it's a long time to get a permit, a lot of money, a lot of fees, and that was kind of like the theme of the different interviews that we did with different people as well. Like I said, I also went to the building department, and I was able to, well, actually I went because I wanted to talk to them so they could give me kind of more of the feedback, why it probably takes long or why the fees. They also did refer me to the website, and they told me that all the information was on the website. And I said, of course, I saw it, but I also thought that it was important to get their perspective on audio, and I wasn't able to do that. But I did get this interview, this following interview. It is in Spanish, so I'm going to play it in Spanish, and then I'm going to translate it after to explain what he's been dealing with over at the building department. So we could go ahead and play that.
¿Cuál ha sido su proceso aquí tratando de agarrar un permiso en San Bernardino?
Pues tuve que sacar primero tienes que hacer todo en línea. Después de que haces en línea una cuenta con ellos, tienes que someter papeles que ellos te piden, planos de la estructura que estás haciendo, sea un cuarto, sea lo que tengas que hacer, planos, traerlos, que lo revisen, ellos tienen que decirte si está bien, si está mal, ya dependiendo de lo que ellos te dicen, tienes que hacer los arreglos que tienes que hacer, volver a venir, y depende de donde estés, qué ciudad sea, qué códigos tenga la ciudad, volver a someter más papeles, hasta que ellos te dan prácticamente la firma de que estás bien o estás mal.
¿Cuánto tiempo ha durado el proceso ahorita?
Aproximadamente llevo 2 meses en esto. Todavía me falta, a lo que sea, otro tiempo más para poder acabar.
¿Y cuánto te ha costado ahorita que estás comenzando?
Aproximadamente llevo $3,000 en cobros que me han hecho ellos.
La ciudad, ¿solo en cobros? ¿Te han visto tus planos ya? No.
Ya los hicieron y nomás para ver los planos a mí me cobraron $700, nomás para ver los planos. Ahorita voy a pagar otros $2,000 porque tuve un problema con donde lo hice, otros $2,000 allí, y por mi casa es importante para los que tengan septic, que no sean público, se pagan otros $500.
So, en total tienes 3,000 ahorita y todavía te falta mucho más.
Todavía me falta mucho más.
¿Y en cuánto tiempo te regresan tus planos?
Pues todo depende como yo lo haga. Si me tardo mucho, pues todo depende en mí. So, si yo lo someto ahora, prácticamente en 2 semanas me dan una respuesta si está bien o falta algo o sobra algo. Pero todo esto es online. Aquí no se puede hacer nada personalmente.
Oh. So, prácticamente tienes que saber hacerlo online o si no te dura más tiempo y te cobran más dinero.
Desafortunadamente, si no lo haces online, no te dejan hacerlo. Ellos aquí no hacen nada personal. Todo es online.
Okay.
Entonces es un poco difícil porque hay códigos que uno no entiende, hay preguntas que uno no sabe qué hacer y muchas veces ni ellos saben responderte. Entonces es difícil si uno lo hace solo. So, a mí lo que me dijeron ellos que es mejor pagar a un contratista que se dedica a hacer esto, que sabe mover los planos, sabe mover más que nada los códigos de la ciudad, que uno no entiende personalmente. Claro. En este caso yo estoy haciendo de mi parte, sin usar contratistas, yo estoy haciendo yo.
So, prácticamente tú estás aprendiendo solo todo este proceso.
Solo. Muchas de las preguntas son por parte de Google, yo me baso en muchas de las preguntas que tengo. Vengo aquí personalmente, no les gusta mucho que venga uno personalmente, porque lo primero que te dicen, online.
Yeah.
Entonces, es difícil, sí es difícil.
Okay. Muchas gracias.
So that interview I did actually at the building department, and it was in Spanish. This man is building something in his home, and I pretty much asked him what his process has been to get a permit here in the San Bernardino County, and he said he's done everything online. He had created an account to submit his paperwork, and he just keeps going back and forth from the building department and his paperwork just to get an account and try to figure out how to get his plan looked at. Finally, after 2 months, he submitted his plan, and he said just for them to look at his plan was $700. He said he had an issue where he had to pay another $2,000 because the issue was that what he had built didn't meet certain requirements or codes. So he so far has spent a total of $3,000 within 2 months, and they just looked at it and said, this is wrong, so that's a $2,000 process, and he's looking into at least another $1,000. And he said, and this is only 2 months that I've worked with them, and I've already spent $3,000. He also said it's a very long process. He says that anytime that he has questions, he tries to go back and ask like how to fill out certain forms or paperwork, and all they tell him is that everything's online and that he has to figure out how to do it online. They also told him if you want, you can also get a contractor or somebody that knows about these type of things so they can just do it for you. So he doesn't want to do that because he also doesn't know anybody and he doesn't trust anybody to go and like hire somebody. So pretty much he said that he goes on Google when he doesn't know what codes they're talking about or what the question is referring to when it refers to a code. He says he Googles everything to try to get his information and try to do it the best that he can. But he's like, that's also going to cost me money because if I don't do it right, then there goes another fee because they're only charging, or they're charging him $700 just to look at what he has. So then he was saying that it's a lot easier if you just go back and forth in person, but they don't like you to do that. So he just said that it's just such a difficult process, and he's been using Google pretty much just to figure it out and submit his plans.
Yeah, an interesting thing you said there is that they don't like they don't like to have people come in to the building department.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, like they want you to just do it online, which I found interesting too, because when I sat there for 2 hours to just ask them, what's the basic stuff of getting a permit, they also told me all the information's online. I'm like, well, I figured that, and I saw that. But I mean, they deal with these type of cases, so I thought that it would just be easier for them to explain it to us too, just so we're not getting different interviews from people, but to hear somebody from their department tell us why sometimes it takes longer, or why the fees, depending on if it's a building or compared to like the person who I interviewed, he's doing his plans for his home.
Right. Yeah. The it's kind of interesting is the two stories that we've kind of covered would be maybe smaller type projects, I'm guessing. And I interviewed a gentleman that was coming out and was obviously he was building a home. Mm-hmm. And his story was, when I asked him why he was there, his story was he was there today or at the building department because the day of his final inspection on a house he was building that he was going to turn around and sell. This is the day of the final inspection. The inspector comes out and finds 3 minor discrepancies and not a big deal. So that the building inspector said, "Hey, that's the good news. The bad news is I got an email as I was coming out to look at your site, and the email said that you have to add a feature to the house that's going to cost you several $1,000s, and you're going to have to hire an engineer to design it, turn in the plans, etc." This is the day of his final inspection,
oh, wow.
And they're adding a feature, and you're like, wouldn't somebody have addressed that like when you turn the initial plans in?
Right.
And this feature, the builder's he's very aware of kind of the area. This is a feature that other houses don't have, except for a few, and the few that did, the owners or the builders elected to put it in themselves. So very capricious in terms of his interaction or the requirements coming out of the building department.
Well, it's also interesting that you say that, because I interviewed somebody, and I actually went to a construction site for this interview, and he brought up a very interesting point. He said he's worked with different people. He's like, to get a permit with a business, it has taken me a very long time. It's been a process. It's a lot of money. He's also worked on projects with citizens that are trying to build something in their home, and he explained how pretty much the same theme that we keep discussing. However, he said, I've worked on a county project, and it seems to be just so flawless, and everything just works a little bit faster and up to code, and everything seems to just be perfect. So they pretty much get the work done a lot faster compared to other projects that he's worked on that don't consist of working for the city or the county. And I found that very interesting too.
Well, that's kind of where it leads to. Everything has to be done by them is what they would like to see it, and they oppress anybody that's trying to do it on their own until it gets to that point. For instance, because of some of these things, the cost of housing in our county is they have some people who do studies in relationship to people's ability to afford housing in our county, and then what the cost is, and it's at its worst point it's ever been. And so you got the people can't afford the housing, and the solution isn't, let's try and streamline some of this stuff so that we can develop housing better, more efficiently, less costly, so people can have houses they can afford. They're now bringing up proposals to have the government build housing and then provide it to people, which they'll charge fees on everybody else to do that with, but they'll do it themselves. That's a lot where that stuff ends up going.
So essentially government funded housing?
Yeah, and I've seen this happen in other places around the country where they say that we have to have government subsidized low-income housing, and we'll own this housing, and then we'll provide housing and to lower-income people and that type of thing.
That's really interesting.
Which of course requires more government people to administer, and the government keeps growing, and
that's interesting because this builder that I talked to, he said 40% of the house. I didn't have time to verify this, but 40% of the cost of a house in the area where he was working went to fees. And you're like, okay, you would think they would start there with trying to cut down the cost of housing rather than saying, okay, we'll take it on as the government.
Yeah, I mean, in the best situations around the country, you have jurisdictions where you can go to the building department, pay $135, submit your plans. They'll give you a building permit. They'll ask you to let them know when you're going to pour your foundation. They'll come out and have a look in general, and that's about it. And it's on you to build a good house, and it's on somebody buying that house to make sure they're buying it from somebody who has a good reputation and that type of stuff. And it works just fine. And it's 5 minutes and $135. And it's not the people that are, working for the government getting paid twice as much as the people working in the private sector, trying to sit there behind a desk and have everybody that's out there trying to work and do something wait for hours and hours to even talk to them, and then giving them a dismissive, that's online or something like that. That's where you get to this elite class that I've been talking about, that, they get paid more, they tell everybody what they have to do. No one can do anything without going through them. He should be working for everybody to make things better in the community, and it's just not happening right now.
The lady at the San Bernardino department did say that, and she kind of said that because I asked her, well, how important is it to really get a permit? Because there's also people, throughout my interviews, I also found out that there's people that, the people that know they're going to stay with their home will build things and not get a permit because they figured they're not going to sell their house. However, she said it's really important, and she's like, because if you start building and you don't know if there's pipelines, or there could be so many different things that you can be building on or over. So she said that that's the main reason for them trying to, regulate these permits for people that are building things in their home and that type of stuff.
Well, I mean, who's going to know? The people at the building department are going to know about the pipes under your property? If it's your property, you've been there, you're dealing with it, you're the one that's going to have to live with it, you're going to know it a whole lot more than them, and that's what you got. I mean, if you get down to it, you got a whole lot of people that don't know anything about what they're trying to regulate, regulating people originally who do know something, but then eventually those people leave because they can't stand it anymore, and then they're regulating people who don't know that much, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hey, look at these people. They don't know what's going on. We have to regulate them. Well, that's because the people who do know, you've chased them away. They're just not going to sit there in your building department for hours on end and go through all this baloney that you're trying to put them through.
Well, and the other risk for the homeowner that says, hey, I'm just going to build it, go back and listen to the show last week.
Yeah.
You get turned in by your neighbor, or you get a $1,000 fine.
And you get prosecution for profit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then ends up costing way more.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're gonna kind of go over maybe solutions or things like that. I also have one more interview that I do want to share that I had with the older lady, and she had more of a positive view, which was very nice to hear as well. So you're listening to U-Turn Radio Show. When we get back, more on the building department here in San Bernardino.
We'll be right back to U-Turn after this commercial break. Don't go away. This is Joe Lyons. Riverside Municipal Airport would like to now honor every American who has made the ultimate sacrifice in our armed forces.
May 28th is Memorial Day, and we honor the memory of Chaplain Emil J. Capone, who served his country above and beyond the call of duty. Capone was serving with the 3rd Battalion of the 8th Cavalry Regiment near Unsan, Korea. Chinese Communist forces were closing in on the American position. Capone exposed himself to direct enemy fire, moving from foxhole to foxhole to encourage the men and carry the wounded to safety. He chose not to escape, but remained behind to care for the wounded, and was taken prisoner of war by the Chinese on November 2, 1950. He died in captivity the following year. Chaplain Emil J. Capon was awarded the Medal of Honor for service above and beyond.
This Memorial Day, the Riverside Municipal Airport salutes Americans' veterans, honoring especially all of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Riverside Airport, itself a Civil Air Patrol site, works with 2 universities offering aviation degree programs, tower-controlled ILS, 6 flight schools, and an A&P school. Riverside Municipal also salutes the city's own National Cemetery. To all who have served above and beyond, to those who have slipped the surly bonds of earth, a heartfelt thank you from Riverside Municipal Airport.
On June 5th, the choice is clear. James Ramos for State Assembly. James Ramos is tackling homelessness in our community, finding permanent housing for more than 400 veterans. Now he's helping homeless youth and families find housing. James Ramos is fighting to keep us safe. San Bernardino County Police and Sheriff support James Ramos for Assembly. We need him in the State Assembly, fighting for us. James Ramos for State Assembly. Paid for by People for Better Government Committee of the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. Not authorized by a candidate or a committee controlled by a candidate.
I'm so tired of the buffering on my smartphone.
I'm so over it. Next.
Right? I am so over it. Next.
A radio? Next.
No buffering, just your favorite local radio station?
Next Radio uses the FM tuner that is already built into your phone, so you can listen to your favorite stations on the go. Because Next Radio uses the FM tuner already built into your smartphone, it saves on data and battery usage. When compared to streaming audio, Next Radio uses less than 1/10 of your data, and your battery will last 3 times longer. Next Radio, it's FM radio on your smartphone.
Introducing a radio inside your cell phone. Listen to all kinds of local radio stations, including KCAA 106.5 Yucaipa and 102.3 Riverside on Next Radio. Download the free Next Radio app today. 100% free, 100% fun, 0% buffering. Stop the buffer and listen to KCAA.
Tom, Nadia, and Eric are back with more only on the U-Turn radio show right here on KCAA.
Huh? Yeah.
Welcome back to U-Turn Radio Show. If you're just joining us, we have covered different experiences people have when they are dealing with the building department and the difficulties they come across to get a permit or how consuming it could be. And lastly, how all of this ends up costing a lot of money and a lot of lost time. And we also do want to clarify the commercials that are aired through our radio show. We are not part of those commercials.
We're not, for instance, supporters of low-cost Viagra or radio shows about growing pot, or James Ramos, who happens to be one of the supervisors of San Bernardino County and certainly bears some responsibility for the problems as he goes for another office supported by the non-affiliated people of San Manuel Indian Reservation that he's been a past chief of. So.
We do support the portions of the advertisement that address Memorial Day, though.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. You got that clear.
Now that we have that out of the way, like I said, we conducted interviews. We interviewed different people, citizens here in San Bernardino County, regarding the building department and how difficult it is to get a permit. My last interview that I held was with an older lady, and she's trying to build something in her home as well. She said that this process has been so long that she's already getting her material that she had ordered in advance, thinking and assuming that her permit was already going to be ready by then. And she said this is already happening this upcoming week. And she's like, and I have not got my permit yet. So I don't know. She's in a dilemma. She doesn't know what she's going to do with all the stuff that she's getting, that she's receiving this upcoming week to start building. However, she was very positive. Her energy was great. And she said the only good thing that I could say is that my process has been a little bit shorter compared to my friend out in Seattle that has taken her over a year to even try to have her stuff looked at as well. So she was very positive about that side of, I guess, story.
But that's like saying, my ship is sinking, but it's not sinking as fast as the ship next to me.
Right, but I mean, that's the only positive, I guess, story that I was able to somewhat share. I feel like I wanted to get different stories, but it just seemed that it's the same thing over and over.
And that's a significant point.
Right.
Same deal. I didn't get any good stories, and I interviewed 6 or 7 people.
Same here.
And I talked to a woman who's been a builder in the county for 25, 30, 40 years, and she's built over 100 houses, and certainly has the experience that may be lacking at the building department. And she said a couple key takeaways were that it's never been worse. It's dealing with the building department has never been worse, and she just gave me the actual figures of going for her last building permit. Just a normal single-family residence. It was a year and a half in permitting. It was $38,000 of costs to build the house, which included, or it would be $28,000 excluding the cost of a fire sprinkler system, which she said is something that is not a good idea to put in most houses like that. They cause more damage. Historically, if anyone took a look at it, they would cause more damage than what they would save. She says probably a result of a lot of firemen that got a side business going on, putting sprinklers in, so they made it mandatory. But she doubted that there could be a lot of support for it over the time, and she said that a lot of homeowners do their best to disconnect them after they move in. So you're $28,000 to $38,000 before you can move forward in building, and a year and a half for a single family residence. She also put in for a multifamily residence, and that was over 3 years, and significantly more fees, but it's hard to break that down per unit.
So that's $38,000 of fees before you ever even break ground, right?
Yeah, and that's so that's a substantial chunk of money when you're
That's
looking at the
insane.
cost of a house just for the permission to go forward, and a year and a half delay where people in the county are not working, where the housing, the housing availability, which is already constrained, is not being improved, and it's she took me through the details a lot of what happens, and they have her get her own architects and engineers, submit plans that are engineered. She has insurance, her architects and engineers have insurance, but the county feels they have to look at everything she does with no background. They haven't built houses, they haven't gone to training as her architects and engineers have, and they don't have any responsibility for it like they have, but they give little things and say, we want it done different, or we want it done different, or we want it done different, with no background for it. So endlessly having to go back and make these small corrections, all of which they charge fees for. Now I know that if it's 1.5 years for a single family residence, it's 3 years for a multifamily residence. I know for commercial projects it's a different situation. Maybe it moves a little faster than that. It's in the area of a year and a half as well on the ones that I was involved in 10 years ago, but there they actually charge you, they don't charge you any set fee, they have you put a deposit up, and then they bill against it. And this is 10 years ago, it must be much more now. Then it was $220 an hour. They bill against that for just anybody. If the clerk at the counter spent some time on your project, you're getting charged $220 an hour against that. And they route them off to the fire department, for instance, to look at for what was unmanned, all concrete and steel project, had no ability to burn at all. There's no fire risk. And they wanted a $1,600 fee initially for the fire department to review it, which mid-course they raised that fee to $8,000. And after a lot of screaming, they agreed to grandfather it back to $1,600 and routed me over to the fire person who signed off on it in less than a minute per set of plans. So they were, in essence, looking to be paid. I had 7 sets of plans and at that time $56,000 for less than 5 minutes of actual time.
Wow.
So these are the problems that exist over there, and it's that people don't bring them up. Why, Dan? Because what about the 2 guys that came out that wanted to talk to you? the building department?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. It was just a short interaction. Stopped a couple of guys that were coming out, said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about the building department," that type of thing, and it was really interesting because the one guy was like, same theme. I don't want to do that. I don't want to interview. I don't want to talk about that because I have to work with these people. And then the other guy he had these eyes that were like, man, I got so many stories that I could tell that I would love to tell, but I'm fearful.
Right.
Because again, what kind of retribution?
It's the situation where they have you. You have to go through them to get your stamps and whatnot. They know that, and they know that they can, get as much money as they want from you and make you go through as many steps as you want and make you wait as long as you want. You don't have any alternatives, and that's where there's no connection between them and the people that they're trying to serve. In fact, the county has taken that connection away in hiring a chief executive officer for the county on a contract that restricts any of the elected officials or their representatives to people who you could go to and say, hey, this is really ridiculous. I'm really getting mistreated here.
Right.
Those people cannot go and talk to anybody in the building department as they used to be able to 10 years ago or so, before this guy, Greg Devereaux, came to work and put this contract in place. They can only talk to the single chief executive officer of the county. So you have a huge funnel into this one individual, then a huge funnel out, which effectively creates a situation that there's no connection between the people who are working, at the county and the people in the county.
So if I have a problem with if I'm a builder and I got a problem with a building project, I can't go to my elected representative or a person that works on his staff and say, hey, I got this problem, can you look into it and get it solved for me? Or I can do that, but then they can't knock on the door at the building department.
They can't address your problem for you by contract. That's the way they've structured it at the county. They can only wait in line at the office of a single person who's supposed to be running the county and running it with the hourglass management structure that anyone would agree was dysfunctional in looking at it, but they've set that up from a contractual standpoint. It has to do with people wanting to make more money in their position and be more protected in their position. So, but let's talk a little bit about what can be done over there. And at least the supervisors that are in place now, at least 3 of them I know personally have been approached with this solution. You can have a trusted builder program installed in the county where you take people that you generally don't have to worry about because they've built for a number of years and they've never had a problem. And that's the criteria. And you can set up a board of builders that meet that criteria to look at anybody else that wants to be part of that group. And you take those people and you say, look, your plans will be dealt with overnight. We know that you know what you're doing.
Right.
It's not our place to get in. And what that does is it allows the business of the county to go forward in terms of getting people to work, and it allows actually them to make more money because every time something's built, they raise the tax base, make more money for themselves. There's nothing not to really like on it when you think about it from the county standpoint. And it takes everybody who wants to do a project and funnels them to the best builders who can then manage these things so that the jobs that are being done in the county are being done by the most qualified people, and you keep those people here. Right now, those people are all being chased away by and large because there's other places they can go work, and there's a big market out there for people who know what they want building, and if you make them go through all these hurdles, they're going to leave, which is exactly what my company did for a lot of the work we did long ago, and we work all over the country, and I have a very good perspective on how these things work elsewhere. So that's something that's easy and could be done and has been presented to the supervisors as a solution. So we always try to provide a solution when we discuss these problems.
As far as citizens, what do you think you can do? Because I feel like, and I don't know if you experienced this, like people are just scared to even try to find somebody that they can like report these things to, So what would be like them citizens, like what's the first step that you would say, like this is the first step that you do? Like how do you get this information? How do you look for these people to kind of like
do you mean if somebody's having a problem,
right,
how do with
like
the building department, how do they
unfortunately you really don't have an answer for that right now. It's just tough luck, and that's, you'll find that you got to go and wait at the building department and go through these endless amount of hoops, and eventually over a period of years and a whole lot of money you'll get a building permit, and that's the way it is. Now if you're a large home builder, what you do is you have an association of home builders and you give an award to the CEO of the county for being a great CEO, and somehow your stuff goes flying through there. And that's exactly what goes on. But if you're just somebody trying to get your house built, you don't have an answer right now. But you do have an answer politically, and we do have an election coming up. And I think my position is you don't have a lot of choices on this ballot that would offer any change to that situation. In that case, you shouldn't vote for somebody, but you should consciously go into the write-in section and say, decline to vote for anybody. That starts the process, and then we're going to try and use our show and some of our resources to try and change things over time. But there's nothing immediately you can do about the problem. It takes time to change those situations. You have to change that structure where your elected representatives can actually talk to the people who are there to provide service for you, and that those people feel that they do have a connection, and that if they do mistreat people, they may hear about it. Right now, that's not the case.
Which is it's a little bit of a good segue into what we're going to do with the next couple shows. The primary's coming up first week in June, and we're going to address that over the next couple shows. We have scheduled in next week the District 5 supervisor candidate out in Riverside.
Right.
Jeff Hewitt is slated to come do a show with us. And then the week following, we hope, we're not certain, but what we hope to do is interview, if you will, the winners. It's a primary election, but I think they call them the nonpartisan elections. If there's just two candidates, if you get 50% more, you win. So if there's any of those types of
there's
races,
all those types of races. Basically, all the ones I've seen have two or less. People running for it. So people don't really have a choice, and it's not going to go into additional. It's not going to go into November, where the top two, which is how this is designed, the top two are already there. That's just what it's got down to in terms of people running.
And we also invite our listeners too, that they can get a hold of us if they have stories that they want to share, or experiences they want to share with the topics that we cover here at U-Turn Radio Show. You can email us at info@uturnradio.com. That's info@uturnradio.com. Like Tom said, we have a great show next week as well. And what else? Is that all that? Oh, and then too, if you guys call 909-792-5222 during our show, you get to win a lot of money, and you can donate it to your favorite charity here in the Inland Empire. Anything else, guys, that you guys want to add to this wrap-up of our amazing show we had today?
No, just again, a thank you to, it is Memorial Day, and thank you to the people that have provided the last full measure on our behalf.
Thank you so much. That was U-Turn Radio Show.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.